Hello and welcome to another Simple Index University video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at output options, or how to choose the file format and the folder and file naming patterns that you would like to use in your storage and retrieval of your documents. For this video we're going to use an existing job that comes with Simple Index. You'll find it in the C Images, Samples, OCR, and Barcodes folder. It's a job called Read Invoices with Zone OCR, and you can see I've got that one open now. Before we do anything else, let's just run this and see what's going on with it. So it's pulling in 4 pages. It's reading an account number, an order number, and a company off of those pages using a Zone OCR in the case of this job. Let's just go ahead and save everything out. Release the batch there. And in our output folder, we see that there are 2 folders using the account number as that folder name. And then within that, we'll see that we're using the order number space dash space, the company name, as our file name. And also that we're saving as TIFFs in this case. So let's go up here and we're going to empty out this folder because we're going to be using it some more. Let's go take a look at the job options. So the first place where we're going to talk about our output options are the File Output tab. And we can see our first thing here is the output folder. We're simply defining where do we want these files to be stored when we save them out of Simple Index. And to get there, we can just press Set. And you can see here that we're already on this path of C, Images, Samples, OCR, and Barcodes, and Output. So if I choose that, and that happens to be the same location where, remember, we opened this SIC file from. So when you're going to the same location that your configuration is already stored in, you'll get an option to use a relative path. There's that option right there. So it's saying insert keyword for default folders. And if we choose that, it's just saying it's going to put in this %config file folder %output. And the %config file folder % is simply saying go to the location where we have stored the Simple Index configuration, the .sic file, and you'll find a subfolder called output, and that's where we want to put the files. Now, if we didn't want that relative keywords, we can hit set here, select it, tell it no, and you'll see just a traditional file path is stored right there. Let's talk about the image file type. So in this case, the job, we saw we had TIFF files saved out. Well, let's say we want to do PDF. So let's go to PDF here. And you can see you have quite a few options there. You've got JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, and so on. PDF and PDFA. PDF is just your typical whatever today's modern PDF is looking like. And then PDFA is an archival standard, which means that it's always going to be opened by even older legacy versions of PDF readers for more of a long-term capability. And then the third option we have here is what to do with existing files. So if Simple Index is saving out your files during that export step, and it runs across a file that already has the exact same file name, what do we do? Well, the default option, and that's the one chosen here, is the append to end. And that just means any new pages we have are going to get put at the rear of the file. So if we've got a 2-page file already in that folder and we've scanned 2 more pages, we'll end up with a 4-page file, and the newest scans will be at the end. Will be pages 3 and 4. Let's see what else we've got here. There's also append to start. Just what it sounds like. We're going to put the newest files at the beginning of the stored file. We can totally replace the file. So if it goes and sees that 2-page file in there, it'll just wipe it out and put in our new 2-page file. So we just end up with the latest pages being the only 2-page file in our output folder. And then finally we have numbered 1-page files. And this is used when you need to store each page as its own separate image. Some more legacy document management systems require that each page kind of come in as its own, and then they're put together by the keywords that are associated with them and what have you. But sometimes this is still a useful thing to have around, so we do number 1 page. Well, let's take a look at that. We're going to choose that. We'll hit OK here and save those changes. And we're going to run the job again. Now remember, it's using all of the indexes to create the folder level and the file name. So in the case where the file name is made up of order and company, let's save this first page and we'll see that the next page has the exact same order number and the exact same company. So that means we're going to have a file that would have 2 pages. It's because it's using the same 2 indexes to put that together. So at the end, those pages, even though we scan them in as individual pages, would go together in one file. Except now we've chosen 1-page files. So let's go ahead and end the job, release it. This time when we look in the output folder and we go into this account A6750448, we'll see that there is two separate PDFs and they're just a single page. So it's named them -001 and -002. That's what the number one page file is going to do for you. We can delete that again because we're going to be using this over and over again. So let's go back in and take a look at those options. Let's go back to output, and we can also see that there are some advanced options here. First off, we have fast export, which disables some options, and you'll see when I check it, things get grayed out here. So the compression options go away, the bookmarks, set file properties, all those things, which we'll be talking about very shortly. Those options all go away so that we just save out a file as quick as we can without worrying about any sort of additional features in that file. And then we have the page number length. So that's referencing when we use the numbered one-page files option up here. So we saw in that output folder, it was the file name -0001. It was a 4-digit number. And so you can put in however long you want that to be. So if it's going to run into tens of thousands, you'll want to make it a 5 or 6-digit number. And then also we have an option here to number the first file. So if you prefer that the very first file, and sometimes you'll have a situation where it's going to be the only file, so you may not want the 0001 to be appended to it. It'll just be that file name, and then you'll never have any other numbered files there. Or if you do have other numbered files, they'll start at 0002, and the first one won't have a number on it. Max pages per file, just like the setting name suggests, is how many total pages do we want to put in each file. So if we're making the multi-page files, so again, we wouldn't have our numbered one page here, we'd be on, let's say, append to end. And we never want a file to grow larger than 20 pages, for example. And so we could just put in a number here. So when it reaches 20, it would start making a new file, and that one would get the next set of pages appended to it. So after it reaches 20 pages, it'll save that file out, and then we'll make another file, same file naming options that we've established already, and that one will become a new 20-page file, and it'll be -0002. So we're still getting a numbered file, it's just no longer a one-page file. Now this feature is also handy when you're running into very, very large files. So if you know a file that's going to exceed, let's say, 500 pages, you can certainly cap it at 500, and that will cut down on the time that it spends outputting those files, because when you get into very large files, it takes a much longer time to actually do the export step. Also, in terms of opening those files later, when you're going back and viewing your files, it makes the file easier to open when it's kept to a limited size. So generally, we'll see this feature used. People will often cap it at, like, let's say 500 when they're making very large files. When you have it set to 0, it's saying make the file however big it's going to be. So if there's going to be 20 pages, there's going to be 50 pages, there's going to be 1,000 pages, it's just going to make the file whatever it turns out to be. That's where we use the 0. Now, before we get into the next set of options, let's look at the other place where we're establishing how we want these folders and file names to be structured. And that's going to be in our indexing and file naming. So you can see our index fields here. They're all OCR fields in this case. The account number, the order number, and the company. And over next to the account number, you can see that the folder option is checked. So we saw that in our output location. There was 2 folders, and they were each named by the account number that it found on the page. And then it used order number and company to make that file name, as we have checked here. And it also separated that file name by the option we're using out here, the field separator, which the default setting is always going to be space, a dash, and a space. And that's exactly what we saw. And down here, you'll see we have sample output that's showing us exactly how it's going to look when it goes out to that folder. So there's the entire folder path to the output. We have account number as the subfolder, and then within that we have the order number, space dash space, and the company name. So keeping that in mind, let's jump back up to file output in our advanced settings. And we saw this first option that says set file properties. So basically that's saying we can go into the properties section of a file, the Windows properties, and we can actually write our indexes to those locations. So let's take a look at, let's go to the input folder here, and we'll take a look at the properties of this file right here. We'll just right click on it, we'll hit properties, and you can see over on the details we have a few different fields here. We have the description, which has a title, a subject, a rating, comments, that sort of thing, and then all these others. So those can actually be addressed by SimpleIndex when we're saving out. So if you needed to write some data into these, that's certainly a possibility. Sometimes that's used because certain document management systems can look at those properties and pull information in from there and use that as keywords inside that document management system. Other times it might just be convenient to store that information with the file in this fashion. So if we want to do that, that's where we turn on the set file properties. Now, if I just turn that on right now, it's going to take account number, order number, and the company and just put it in the keywords or the comments of that properties section. But we can actually go to our indexing and file naming, and if we make one of our field names correspond exactly with one of those field names shown in the properties, then it'll actually write it to the field that we designate. So if I want it to be the account number to go into the title section of that file, I can choose title here. Let's go back to output. We'll enable our set file properties, and we're also going to keep these as TIFFs because it's TIFFs that show those different image properties. PDFs also have some properties, but it's not the same ones, and it will just write your indexes to one field in there. PDFs don't have the level of granularity that image file formats like a TIFF do. So anyway, let's save this out and take a look at that. So when we run the job this time, and we'll save all, export it, and when it brings up the output, we can go here, we can right click on that, we can go to the properties, and you can see in the details that my title line now has the account number placed into that title field. And again, that's because I set my index field to have the same name as the property that I wanted to change in here. Back in file output, I'm going to switch over to PDF again. And we're going to turn off the set file properties, and we're going to skip down to this bookmark PDF files. So what that allows us to do is exactly like it says, we can put bookmarks within a single PDF. So let's turn that on, and we set which fields, and it can be a hierarchy too, so you could have one index field become a certain level of bookmark, and then underneath that bookmark you could have a subheading of bookmarks, and so if we press set, we'll see how that works. So we've got this automatic, so level 1, level 2, etc. We're just going to choose one here. We're going to make the company into our level of bookmark. Choose OK here. And we're going to change things up in the job just a little bit. So let's go down here, and we're going to change this up a little. First of all, let's set this back to account number where it was before. Number. And then we're going to add a field that's real basic. It's just going to be a fixed field. And we're going to just have, it'll be our document type. So these are going to be all invoices as we know. So we'll put in the doc type there and spell that with just one T. And we're going to make that be our file name. Next. And we're just going to click on through and finish out here. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it up to the top. And then I am going to turn off my folder and file naming options here. Now remember, I've set my company as a bookmark. Fixed field where we want to just have one file called invoices. We'll just go ahead and fill that into the template area right here. And we'll save that out. Go ahead and run the job. And we'll save all, release this batch here. And now we see in the output location we have just a called invoices.pdf. And when we open that file into a PDF reader, we can see that it now has two bookmarks within it as we set it to the company, and so we can go and see all the invoices for tech type interfaces, and we can jump over to the ones for paper scan. And once again, we're going to empty out our output folder here. Back in our job options and the file output settings, I'm going to turn off that bookmark PDF that we were just messing with. Over here we have compression options. And we see these are just options for setting the compression when making black and white or color images of TIFF, PDF, or JPEG. And you have the option for what type of compression, either none or the group 4 for black and white images. In color images we have a few choices there. LZW, which is a kind of a legacy format still around that's used in TIFF files primarily. And then a couple of the newer options, even including the new JPEG 2000 standard. And there's a slider here that lets us set the compression quality when we're using either of any of the JPEG standards. And in this case, you can see it's defaulting to 90%. So it's compressing to 90% of the total capability of that standard, which means our image quality is going to go down, but we're not too worried about that with this one. We're setting it at 90. If you do need to keep higher image quality, you're finding that the quality's falling off too much, you can certainly lower that slider. Let's cancel out of here. And then we also see one we haven't talked about here, populate PDF form fields. And for that, we're going to take a look at a different job. So I've opened a job here that's filling in some PDF forms. They're fillable PDFs. They have blank areas on them, and we want to insert some data. So in this case, we've got data that's come in as an XML. So the scenario you might think of here is that someone has filled out a survey online, but we're needing to create an image that has that information put into an actual form so that someone can view it and not just have a list of data. And if we look in the input options here, we can see what's going on. So we have this patient data that's come in, and we have the patient data in the form of XML, and you can just see we have a visit date and date of birth and a few other fields there. We won't dwell on this too much because we're just trying to show the capabilities for the output. And then we also have a blank version of the survey that we're going to plug that data into. And you can see these are fillable forms where you can just click in any of these and actually enter data into those sections. And the way this is all able to work is that we've done a couple of things. In the file output, we have ticked that box for populate the PDF form fields. So we're saying instead of creating just a PDF like we normally do in SimpleIndex, we're actually going to insert some data into PDFs as we're going. And then also in our indexing and file naming, we have set the names of the fields to correspond to how the names appear on that fillable document. So it's visit with no space date, it's date of birth with no spaces in it. Those are the names of the various fields on that particular form. And then in the case of the template here, these are all fixed fields you see. And then in the case of the template, we're just telling it to go to that XML file and find the field that's visit date. In this case, find the field that's date of birth and so on, and bring those values into that fillable field. So again, we're not going to dwell on this, but it is something that SimpleIndex does have the capability of doing. And let's just take a look at it running so you can get a sense for what's possible. So I'll exit out here. We'll run the job. And this one's just totally automated. It goes through. And if we go look at the output location, we can see that we now have a series of files that are named by that patient name. And if we open one of these up, we'll see that the fields have indeed been populated. Date of visit, date of birth, whereas before those we were just looking at empty files. Now back to our job we've been working with, the read invoices with Zone OCR job. Let's go back to the file output and we'll see there's one more thing. We do have the ability to upload files to a SharePoint site. So you'd simply insert the URL for that site here. There's also options to log in and test your connection, of course. And then we have remove local files after upload. So normally in this situation, the files are being written to an output location, whatever we specified up here, and then the step to move them to SharePoint takes over after they've been placed in that folder. And if we want to remove them out of our output folder so that it's blank and empty and ready to go for the next job, then that's what that tick box is for. And there are a few other places besides the file output and indexing and file naming settings where you do have some output options. So for example, in OCR, we do have some options here that affect what happens to the output file. Specifically in the advanced OCR settings, we have output full page OCR files. So if we're creating a PDF and we want to have all the words in that PDF converted to text, and it can be searchable, it can be highlighted, it can do copy and paste, we would have our enable full page OCR turned on, and then you can see those options are enabled, and we can output full page OCR files. So that's going to make a PDF with full text included in it. Below that, we also have an option to output zone OCR data to text files. So in the job we're using right now, we could actually save out the bit of text that we're reading in each of our zones. As we capture these various indexes over here, we can output that into the output folder as just a TXT file. So you'd have your PDF, and then you'd also have a little TXT file that shows the information that it read in each of the zones as it went through the job. If we look at the PDF processing tab, there's a couple of options here that are involved with the output. We can encrypt the files and set a password for doing that. So you simply type in a password here when you're making PDF as your output format, and that would be the password required to decrypt the file when another user later opens up that PDF file. You can also have it automatically use the password from the user logon. If we go to the advanced settings and we look in the indexing options, we do have a couple of options here that also have something to do specifically with the output step. We can move files with the missing values to the backup folder. And the idea there is if we've done some indexing and let's say that during this OCR job we've been using so far, it didn't find certain values and we just went ahead and saved it out without those values being filled in, it would substitute missing as the value that gets placed instead of, say, the account number. And so any of the files that have missing values can be sent to the backup folder. And what this does is it just separates those out to be dealt with later. So you don't have to go to the output folder, look through and find each one that has the word missing somewhere in the file name and pull it out to be dealt with on its own. You can just have them sent over to the backup folder, and then they can be addressed at a later time. So that's it for the output options. You can see there's a lot of flexibility here. We covered a lot of topics. We had our file format. We had multi-page files, how we deal with those. We looked at our indexing and file naming properties, where we can actually set which of our indexes become folders, which of our indexes become part of the file name. We looked at what to do when a file already in the folder has that name. Do we want to add to that or make a new file? We also looked at how we can set max pages. We also looked at how we can set file properties using the Windows properties. And then also we saw bookmarking within PDFs, and we have some options as far as what to do when there's missing values in our indexes. So as always, we're here to help. If you have any questions, please contact us via support@simpleindex.com or use our wiki that's found on any page of the Simple Index website. And I hope this has proved useful. We'll talk to you in the next video.